How you doing, Mark?
Hey, Arnie. You see the flag right now, Murray?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good. I don't know why I can't tell if I'm together. Okay.
And you are recording.
Turn my volume up there. Yeah, since Kristen has to drop off fairly quickly, you could defer minutes, although I don't think there'll probably be any comments, but that's up to you.
I think what I'm going to do is, yeah, I'll go through that real quick, but I think I'm just going to open it up and say, we really have two things to discuss here. One is the meat of the ordinance was written, and two, do we think we want to put it into the format of the consultation zone? And then I'm going to turn around to Kristen and say, is there anything you'd like to add, Kristen, before we start our discussion?
That's exactly what I thought. You know, she had some thoughts. She thought it was a good format. So maybe we just get her thoughts on why it's better than what we're.
Yeah. Is that format different with the whereas and all that? That we don't do? Do we normally do that?
No, I mean, there will be some whereas statements on the first page.
Okay.
In fact, ours, our draft.
You don't have it in the draft.
Our draft has doesn't have any, but and it's not necessary, but
okay,
you could add it. It basically gives kind of the reasoning behind why it's been why we're considering it.
Okay.
And there she is.
Hey, Kristen.
There's Mike.
Which Mike? Mike
Pagnanelli.
Yeah. Do I have an echo from someone?
I don't.
I have an echo. Who? Does somebody have a phone on?
No.
Hello? Okay. Test. Yeah, I thought I had an echo. Worst part about these Zoom meetings is you can see. Worst part about these Zoom meetings is you can see yourself, and I just can't believe how old I'm getting. Oh, John's on. How you doing, John? I think you're on mute, John.
There I am.
2, 3. Need one more. 4 minutes still.
Hey, Ruth.
Hi, Mark.
Hello. Two more people, sorry. A minute.
Hey, Mark, how are you? Mike,
Hey, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, guys.
Ed Decker,
Happy New Year.
Mike Cozy. Happy New Year.
You guys.
Hey, how you doing?
All you're missing is Dan, right?
Select Dan. Yep, just Dan for now. But
I didn't get any email from him.
neither did I.
Okay, we'll just wait another second or two. Let me just close my door. Okay, it's 19:01. Let's go ahead and start. This is the January 6th Wednesday Planning Commission meeting. I'm going to call to order. And we'll start with a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence for our first responders, firefighters, nurses, and doctors. Okay, put the flag up, Mark. Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, liberty and justice for all. I'd like to take a moment of silence for those who protect us, our first responders, our nurses, doctors, and our servicemen. Okay, thank you very much. Right, take the flag down. This is the first meeting of the year, and one of the things we need to do as a committee. Oh, Dan, how are you? One of the first meetings we have to do is first actions we got to do at the beginning of the year is we have to potentially reorganize. And what that means is, do we need to make any changes to the chairman and to the vice chair? I'll just put it out there. I'm okay staying on as a chairman. I don't know if John wants to stay on as a vice chair. If we don't have to make any changes, we can go ahead and move forward unless someone has a desire to make a change or request to move into a different position. So I'll just put that out to the organization. Is there any requests?
I'll stay in my current position unless somebody else is interested in taking it on.
Okay, John. Anybody else interested?
I'm supportive of staying as is. This is doing a good job.
Great job. Yeah.
Ed, Mike?
I'm good with keeping it the way it is.
Okay, then let the minutes reflect
So am I.
that we'll keep, thank you. We'll let the minutes reflect that we'll keep the organization as it is for the next year. I know we're recording a meeting. I'm just going down the agenda here. I know we're recording a meeting. As far as the tracking log, I think the only thing we have on is what we're going to talk about today. Is that correct, Mark?
Yes.
Okay, any comments on the meeting minutes? I have none.
I have none.
None.
I I had one comment. I guess I didn't quite figure out how I should reword it, but page 1, line 41 and 42, I guess. Says Dan feels that it should be done by professionals specializing in pipelines. That's fine. He feels this would probably be someone who works for the pipeline company. I'm not advocating, I wasn't advocating that it be someone from the pipeline, but it would probably end up being that.
I can just take it out.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think maybe we just strike that second sentence
Okay.
would be
I
appropriate.
agree.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, minutes approved. Tonight we have really two things on the agenda. One is the pipeline ordinance. And I just want to set the stage. Kristen is with us. She has to cut out at 7:25 for another meeting, so I'm gonna let her speak first. But I just want to put this in perspective. There's really two things we need to decide, I think, here. One, two main things. One is the draft ordinance that was provided by Mark. And I would call that the meat of that ordinance, whether that's what we need or not. And the second part is in there, I think you saw in his write-up, they came across a consultation zone, which I think Kristen will make some comments where she kind of likes the format. And I think we have to decide, do we want to use that format or not? And with that, I'll open it up to Kristen to provide us any comments that she might want to provide, knowing she has a meeting coming up at 7:30.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, I don't think it's an either or an or. I think that both could be adopted. The first one is really the one that we're working on now, which is an amendment to your subdivision ordinance, would really be more future, forward looking as far as undeveloped land, which obviously there's not a lot of undeveloped parcels in East Goshen, but also redevelopment if something was going to be torn down and rebuilt. So this is where this ordinance will come into play. And I just took, from our last conversation about it, it's adding a section to your subdivision ordinance. It would come into play when you're either submitting a land development application, when you're filing a PRD application, a tentative plan for planned residential development, or third, if you're filing a conditional use application for the specific uses that are outlined on pages 2 and 3. And those uses, Mark and I sort of went through. I went through every zoning district and just looked at the ones that I thought were, populated, a lot of people, a certain type of person, children, elderly, people that might not be as mobile. Those were really how I made my determination or my recommendation for which conditional uses would be required to submit this type of a study. And it sort of goes along the line of just other studies that you submit when you're doing these types of applications, along the lines of environmental impact, traffic impact. Sometimes you have to do fiscal impact studies and things like that. So this would be just another study that is evaluated by a professional at the township. As I don't think I did put in here a little bit about the types of consultants that the township would have the authority to review this study, although I don't think that's necessary, because I think under just the general standards in the MPC and in your subdivision ordinance, you're allowed to hire professional consultants to evaluate the materials that an applicant submits. But I did throw in here that the planning commission and board can seek input from the emergency management coordinator, fire marshal, fire chief, utility providers, pipeline task force, or any other person or entity with experience or knowledge of hazards associated with hazardous liquid pipelines and natural gas pipelines. So what I did too was I went back and looked at, we talked about the types of pipelines that we think this should be applied to, and I've just added those as definitions, mirroring the definitions from the ordinance that the board enacted on the transmission pipeline and hazardous liquid pipelines. And those come from definitions under the federal regulations. Again, identifying when it's applicable, identifying specifically what has to be contained within these studies. And I tried not to, when I did this, I looked at what the subdivision ordinance already requires when you submit a land development plan, what has to be on your plan. I was trying to not duplicate that, because remember, you're going to get that information anyway. This is additional materials that have to be specific to what pipelines are around you or within 660 feet, And that number came from a recommendation of, Mark had mentioned that there's a resource that uses that number based on, I guess, impact zone. So that's where we got that 660 feet number. Identifying what's part of the report, and then basically the meat of it is once we get this report and once we get this study filed, what do you do with it? So you as the planning commission would be the first group that would be evaluating it, looking at it, and deciding whether any revisions or edits to either the land development plan, the PRD plan, or the conditional use, you know, how they're operating a specific use, whether there's anything you could suggest to protect safety as a result of knowing this pipeline is around. You know, I can't, it's one of those things that until you see it and get it, it's hard to really imagine what meaningful change would come out of it. But I guess in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, maybe where you locate your access driveway, where you locate a fire hydrant, where you locate, you know, as far as a use is concerned, should you have another means of egress to a road? Should you widen the entrance driveway to, you know, to allow certain types of emergency equipment to come in? I guess those are the things I'm thinking that when you get one of these reports and you see how close, or maybe it's not so close and it's not a big deal, you know, nothing needs to change, but it at least starts a dialogue and discussion. And one of the things I said to Mark is I think it's helpful to an applicant to, you know, we assume that people know, I mean, you guys in East Goshen have been talking about pipelines for, gosh, you know, years now, but maybe somebody coming in who buys a piece of land isn't as knowledgeable about what's underneath the ground in East Goshen and how that may or may not impact what they're trying to do. So I think it's helpful to have this also as an education tool to the applicant to be aware of what's in and around what they're trying to develop, and see if there's protective measures that they have to take and plan changes that they have to, you know, bring about. So, I mean, I think, again, it'll be interesting to see how meaningful it is and how much it gets used, but I think it's a good step. The second ordinance, when Mark had sent over the PHMSA information to me, they had a link to a model ordinance that I think is actually more important because of the way East Goshen is already developed and because of the number of pipelines that run throughout your township. Again, it goes more towards the just being aware, you know, applicants who come in, people that are submitting building permit applications, maybe it's contractors submitting it on behalf of the property owner, just to take a step back and be aware of what's in and around the building that they're building or they're demolishing, and having that dialogue and conversation with the pipeline company to the extent that they can. I represent Cowan Township, and there's a natural gas pipeline that runs through a lot of the properties in Cowan. And I know that these issues came up sometimes later, you know, along Lloyd Avenue, which is one of the main streets that connects Route 30 to the bypass. And I know a residential development that went in and they didn't do a really good reach out and communication with the pipeline company. And it ended up costing a lot of money when the development was already, you know, permitted and starting to be built. And I think if those conversations had happened sooner, they could have saved everybody a lot of hassle and money. And there were significant, I think, Dan, I think maybe your office was involved in it. It was called Claire Lynn. But they had to go back to the drawing board and reconfigure some things. And it really ended up, like I said, causing delay and hassle and expense. And so I think that second ordinance is more, you know, before you go to do anything, let's just be aware of what's out there and force the dialogue, or at least strongly encourage the dialogue with the pipeline company to see what their standards are. And, you know, if there's anything that they want to tell the township and be involved in the permitting process. So, and some of you, I mean, you know, I obviously recognize I am not the one that's having those conversations. You know, engineers are the ones that probably have those reach out and conversation. Maybe that is happening, but I don't think it's a bad idea to memorialize that into an ordinance and, you know, make the applicant prove to you that they've had those conversations, or at least had a good faith effort to reach out to those companies for that conversation.
Christy, can I just stop you there for a minute?
Yep.
You just hit on like the area that I was interested in. What is the difference with the ordinance versus with the one you found, the model one, consultation zone, versus the one we've written up. Is it the fact that that one requires the applicant to contact the pipeline company? I thought that was.
Well,
in
yeah,
this.
so Ernie, I think it's the applicability, and I actually don't have the consultation one in front of me, but the first one is simply an amendment to your subdivision ordinance.
Okay,
Actually, you know what we need to do though? We also need to, and Mark, I didn't do this. I didn't think about this. I worked on this over the holidays, so I probably was not as, there's a follow-up step. It would be, I think the applicability section is what's differentiates the two. So the one, which we call the pipeline hazard mitigation, that applies when somebody's submitting a preliminary land development plan and a tentative PRD plan and a certain type of conditional use application. So we probably have to make an amendment to your zoning code to also, because you're not going to look in your subdivision ordinance if the only thing you're doing is filing a conditional use application.
Yeah.
So we'll have to add something to zoning to capture that. Because some of these, for example, if there's an existing building that's already built and the only thing you're doing is changing the use and it requires conditional use to change the use, we need to have it in zoning that this study has to be submitted. So there's another section I need to add. But that's what this ordinance does. It's only in those three instances are you required to prepare this additional study that then is a tool that you use as the planning commission to see if there's any changes that you want to see, brought forward either in their land development plan, their PRD plan, or for a conditional use application, how they're going to go about operating that specific use. And that's
So
what this study is intended to do. It's to give you additional information to figure out, well, how close is the pipeline? What are some risks and harms that the pipeline could cause? And if there are any, is there anything that can be done at the plan stage or before the conditional use order is approved? Like, would you say it was a conditional use? Would you as a planning commission suggest that certain conditions be imposed as a result of knowing that the pipeline is that many certain feet from, their entrance, or, their playground area for a school, for example, is 10 feet from the pipeline. And maybe you want to say, oh, well, you know what? Shift the playground to be on the other side of the building. I mean, those are the kinds of things that I think you could look at. The pipeline consultation zone, and again, I don't have it in front of me, but the way I remember reading it, it's more like the building permit. So it's buildings that are already built and you're coming in and you're asking for a permit to build an addition or do a demolition permit. And in that case, we're saying, look, just be aware, find out if there's pipelines around you and go and make contact with those owners of those companies to see what, if anything, they have construction standards or protection standards that you need to follow. So
Yeah,
that one would be either, we can't put it into your building code. We'd have to have it be sort of a standalone ordinance, but it's not, it'd be a self-contained new chapter of the East Goshen Code. It wouldn't be a specific provision of your subdivision ordinance or your zoning ordinance.
Yeah, so it's something that we would hand off, at the building permit phase, like if they're doing thing is, if they demolish. So this would be for any development permit.
Yeah,
So,
it's broader.
yeah. So this would require someone with a single family home who wants to develop an addition on their house. That seems.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't, you guys have to decide whether you think that's too onerous. And maybe it's at a certain level, maybe it's a certain size of construction, maybe it's, you can tailor that. But again, given that East Goshen's, pretty much built out, you're not going to have a lot of, I don't see a PRD coming before you, maybe one at the most. You're going to have some land developments, maybe, yeah, a few. Are you going to have conditional uses for zoning changes? Yeah, maybe a couple, but.
So let me just jump in there. Not going into the meat of the ordinance like you're going into, just from a technical standpoint of how you put the ordinance out. If we were to add the, I think you call the applicability section to what's written up, would that kind of cover most of what you think is good about this other ordinance?
Is there a way to combine them?
No, I guess, no, I'm not saying that. And that's why I think the second one is actually more beneficial, because if you always have to examine what is your intention. The ordinances are going to be evaluated based on what is the goal you're trying to achieve. So you guys need to decide what is it that you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to achieve making sure that you are protecting property and human life in close proximity to transmission pipelines, then to me, the consultation zone ordinance is more tailored to accomplish that goal. I think.
Okay. And this second one would be a whole new chapter in our ordinance.
Right.
What would that go under, Mark?
It would be standalone, so it wouldn't be zoning, it wouldn't be subdivision. It would sit out there like with our noise ordinance or, you know, our sewers ordinance or something like that.
Okay.
I mean,
then-
really, it should be part of building code, but given that we have
It
to
can,
follow the
yeah.
chtewide building code, we can't
part of the
really
building code,
add it
so.
as a part of your building code.
But we have
Okay.
a chapter on buildings, so maybe.
Okay, let me just stop there. Kristen's got a couple more minutes. Is there anybody from the commission would like to ask Kristen a question?
I have one question that I would weigh in, her to weigh in on the ordinance that her and the staff prepared. Page 1, the bottom of it, it says, as part of a preliminary plan submission for any land development application where the proposed property is to be developed is located within 660 feet of the center line of the pipeline. So I'm envisioning here getting an argument here, the proposed property within, as opposed to a limit of disturbance. If you have a 20-acre parcel and you're doing something on the far side of the parcel, and you're not 660 feet away from where you're doing all your work. That's just, and I did check the ordinance, and there isn't a definition of property. And are we talking about if you're 660 feet away from where you're working, or is it if your property's within that 660 feet, you're doing this study?
My intention, Dan, was not to do it from a limit of disturbance, but it was from whatever, and maybe I have to go back on the definitions. There might be a definition for tract being the property that's proposed to be developed. Maybe that's the better way to say it, because my intention was, in your scenario, if the only thing you're disturbing is something that's further away from the pipeline, but you're putting, I'd want to make sure you're capturing the whole development, looking at the totality of the development to see if there's tweaks that can be made given where it is. And even though not all of it is within 660 feet, some of it is. So I wouldn't want to say, oh, you're just looking at this 1/3 of the tract versus looking at the tract as a whole.
And if you had a property where you were 2,000 feet away and you weren't doing anything, this is a saldo requirement, so you can always waive it if it was out there.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and I think you can handle that on a case-by-case basis and just make it within the tract. There is a definition of tract.
Tract.
So ultimately here, I would suggest that be changed to that.
Yep.
where the tract is to be developed is within 660 feet. And then you always just handle it on a case-by-case basis if it really isn't applicable and you want to waive it.
I think that's one way to go about it. Yep.
Okay. Anything else, Dan?
Kristen,
I had one question. Should the measurement be from the edge of the easement as opposed to the center line of the pipeline? Because the pipeline could be anywhere within that easement.
Well, we don't always, the reason why I did it that way was because a lot of easements don't have a defined width. Older
And-
pipelines don't have a defined width.
And PIPA and PHMSA both recommend from the center line of the pipe.
Can we define where the center line of the pipe is?
It's the center line of the pipe.
But do we know where the pipes are physically located? We have a plan of that? Or we have just an approximation?
There is approximations there and they're available, so.
Okay.
But also what happens is when you go do a survey of your property, you actually request and have those pipelines actually staked out. So
Okay.
you're actually the pipeline companies, and we've been doing that on some recent projects. They literally come out and stake it out for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
Texas Eastern for number 1 that goes near your development, John. they will come out if you're gonna put in landscaping, they'll come out and stake the center line of the pipeline.
Okay.
Anybody else for Kristen?
Hey,
Yeah, quick
Kristen,
question.
Oops, sorry, go ahead.
All right, I'll go quick, Mark. But so as part of the conditional use application, and we have like you listed like what you were saying was like elderly or children places, whatever you want to call it. If it was in an area where it was in use by right, but it was the same type, like for example in C1, if it was a professional office building, would they have to provide this study because it's listed here as a conditional use, or only if it was a conditional use in our zoning?
Yeah, only if it's a conditional use.
Okay, got it. So any use by right in that zoning ordinance as is defined currently wouldn't like trigger this study.
Yeah, and that's for discussion. That's not to say that if you want to have it be submitted as part of a building permit review for a use by right, you could, but then you don't really have the ability to impose conditions that would effectuate, safety measures if it's a use by right. So that's sort of why we focused on just things that where you have a conditional use application, because the conditional use, there's the law behind it is that the board of supervisors feels that use is appropriate in that district, provided that reasonable conditions could be imposed to protect the public health, safety, welfare. So with this study for those uses, you'd be seeing if there's additional conditions that have to be imposed to protect the public health, safety, and welfare as a result of the pipeline being closed.
Okay.
And
what about
Mike, real quick, a lot of those by right uses are going to be a land development requirement anyway. So we're getting
That's right.
the lion's share of the uses by doing this way.
And then how would accessory uses work? Like if you were a conditional use that wants to, in the business park that wants to add a fence as an accessory use, would you have to do this study?
No.
All right.
No. It's only when you're first submitting that conditional use application. Or as Mark said, if it's a building of a building that constitutes land development, putting in a fence wouldn't be a land development.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think there was one more question.
Yeah, Ernie, it's Mark. Kristen, and I apologize if you guys have already covered this, but in section C, when it's saying as a result of the review that we do of what's submitted, the commission or board may require the applicant to revise its plans to mitigate potential negative impacts. And it goes on. Is the conclusion that that's within our the township's authority because it's related to health, safety, and welfare? So
Yes.
Therefore, it's broad enough to cover that. So whatever we would say is required, say within the code to, require a separate entrance or, replacement of a fire hydrant or whatever, that's something that we could do without having it attacked, from an illegality standpoint.
No, I think as long as what you're proposing is not completely ridiculously, I don't want to say expensive. That's not the only criteria to look at it. But yeah, as long as you can articulate that the edit or the change that you're asking them to make will in fact have an improvement upon public health, safety, welfare as it relates to the pipeline, I don't think that can be challenged. I think that is within your realm under, the MPC and your subdivision ordinance to have regulations that aim to have compatible land uses, near one another and mitigate harms from land uses that aren't compatible.
So we just have to set forth the bases on the recommendations so that when the board gets it to evaluate, they've got an underpinning to, establish the basis that one affects health, safety, and welfare, and it's for the benefit, of the residents in that regard, and that this is necessary in order to protect the health, welfare, and safety.
Yeah, it's sort of a negotiation. A lot of times, you guys suggest conditions and the applicant's counsel says, well, you know what, could we do it this way rather than that way? And it's sort of a give and take. I sort of think that's what's going to happen is they're going to put forth this study. Your consultants are going to say, oh, well, you know what, I think my recommendation to you planning commission is that you ask them to do this. you ask them to do that and they say, well, I don't really want to do that, but can I do this instead? And it's sort of this back and forth. So, I view it that yes, at the end of the day, you would have the authority to impose those conditions, and there will be some give and take with the applicant and dialogue to come up with something that everybody can agree upon.
Again,
Gotcha.
I mean,
Thanks,
the
Kristen.
broad,
Good
Okay.
job.
the broadest
Okay.
intent is to
We
have
promise-
the conversation about the pipeline, about the development, so that we have it all on the table and everybody's talking about it. And that's really what the board is, I think, trying to, that's what they charge us to do, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
we've used Kristen's time. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
So I'll get with Kristen and we'll talk about that consultation room. I think it makes sense to show that to the board in a format that makes sense for us. I don't know how the rest of you guys feel, but we could work on that. We'll have that ready for next month if you want.
Well, before we jump to that, what I'd like to do is I want to do two-part effort here just to be efficient, okay? First of all, I'd like to have just some discussion on whether you want to do it with the consultation ordinance or with the saldo ordinance that's in front of us. And then two, if we decide that, I think a lot of the stuff that's going to go into the consultation is already in here. What I'd like to do is go through and see if there's comments on what you've written up, okay? So let me just open it up to the commission. Which would you rather go? Would you rather go the route with the whole new ordinance of the consultation ordinance that was
Well, Ernie,
provided?
I think what Kristen was saying real quick is that the first one we need to do for subdivision and land development. Consultation would be additional. So there'd be
Oh,
both.
So I have both, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't see it that way because I thought
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff that was in the consultation would be the
And
same
that's right.
stuff.
And we may just strip out some of that. So that's why I wanted to work with Kristen on that and get you a format that makes more sense. Right now, it was literally like 10 minutes before we were putting all this together, and I found it, and she commented on it and said, I like this one. We ought to talk about this. So we hadn't even spent a bunch of time on that.
All right, so you're saying that by February's meeting, you believe you could put this in a format that would be presentable?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a few things that we already identified that we have to fix in the saldo one, because we have to reference back to the zoning, and then we'll clean up that consultation, put it in our format, pull out some of that other stuff that is repetitive and it's not needed because we're already capturing it in our saldo.
Okay.
So
Okay, can you do that? Well, depending on the comments we get tonight, do you think you'd be able to get that done to the point where we could say in February that this is a done deal? We're going to send it to the board.
I think so. So especially, I mean, if you wanted to be involved in that, just to, back and forth with Kristen on it, we could probably have something that's really, really close, I think.
So let's shoot on doing that and having, I guess, two things to look at in the February meeting. If it's done to the point where we think we can move it forward, we can vote on it, move it forward. Otherwise, we'll make changes and maybe we'll have a working meeting in the middle of March or something. Point is, I'd like to get this off the plate, period. I want to get it through the barn door.
I think this was probably the biggest jump we've made in the last year. So,
I mean, I don't want to push to where it's wrong, but I'm just going to put my senior executive hat on and say, I'm pushing to get this done. So I'm trying to be nice about it, but okay. So if everyone's okay with that, let's go through the saldo ordinance, and if there's, because I have a few comments, and we'll capture any comments on that. And I'll start with where's my list of people? I'll start with Mike Pagnelli. Do you have any comments on it?
I had noticed in section 2, subpart 3, where it lists all of the uses. It's repetitive, but Mark had said that he needed to clean all that stuff up. That was really the biggest thing that jumped out at me. It's just cleaning up that list of all the uses.
Okay, thank you. Mark Levy?
No, yeah, I'm good. I mean, I think
Okay.
it's a good thing. There's only that one, there's like one bracket typo on
Yeah.
page 3
Got it.
between
I got
T and U.
Yeah.
And then,
Okay.
some spacing stuff, but I think that you guys, it's a good job.
Great.
How do you guys feeling about the uses like Township Park and public
I was
facility?
going to.
A public utility facility is going to be located in the pipeline easement. I mean, we dealt with that. It's a pipeline station. I mean, do they need to do a pipeline hazardous mitigation study when it's a pipeline facility in the right of way? I mean,
I was going to suggest taking Township Park out, and I agree with your comment on the public utility.
Though, Mark, it would be very interesting to getting a study prepared by a pipeline company for their public utility facility, see what they have to say about their own facility and the safety mitigation. And
yeah, I didn't think about it like that. You're right.
They could probably fight it though because it's on their easement. I don't know. But, well, I'm okay with taking the park out, and I'm okay with taking the public utility out.
I'll talk with Kristen about the utilities.
Okay.
Private recreation was not one that I thought was, but you could have a lot of people at the YMCA, and if there's not a pipeline there, but if we had one near a pipeline, I guess that could be a challenge. I didn't church or place of worship just because they're full 1 or 2 days a week. I mean, in my that's my opinion, but you're right. You could have a lot of people there. I didn't have business and professional offices either, but you could have a lot of folks there. So.
Okay.
I didn't have
Mike Koza, any questions?
No, she answered most of mine already, and Dan touched on the 660, which makes sense, I guess, if you're going to deal with, as far as being to the property or the disturbance, but if you're putting roads and everything in, I get it. So I'm good.
Okay, Ed Decker? Ed? We lose Ed?
No, I'm here. Sorry, I've been using an iPad and had to switch back to a computer, and the unmute was in a different spot. So, no, I'm good with the way this is written. I think you guys did a nice job pulling this together.
Okay. Dan Daly?
So I guess my one comment was related to the track versus the property, which Mark, that however that language gets changed, it's going to come in on page 1. It's going to come in a couple different spots where it says the proposed land development, the property. So I think there's going to be a couple spots once you figure out that language. I think I have 4 spots within the ordinance that are that you're referencing back to wherever the 660 feet is. So
okay, so we'll look for property and 660 and make sure we.
Correct. So I have 4 in mind right now that I think it's going to come up as. The only other topic, and we touched base on it a little bit here, is that conditional use versus uses by right. So if as part of conditional, so I'm on page 2, item number 3, as part of a conditional use application. So I understand where Kristen was coming from, that during a conditional use application is where you have the right to put conditions on a project here. But I could see by right use there being a benefit to still have this study, although we may not have the authority or the legs to make them change things as spelled out in the last page, subsection C, that they need to consider with respect to their plans. So so this is only hitting, and I guess I'm not well versed enough with the ordinance to see how many of these projects would come through here as a conditional use versus a use by right. So that's the only part that I think that I don't know the answer to this, but that's a concern of mine that we're only hitting conditional use applications.
Well, that's where the consultation ordinance comes in. I'll get everybody. Anytime they come in for a building permit, we'll be able to say, here's your packet. You need to go complete this for consultation because you're within 660 feet and you're developing a project. And my intent would be to have that consultation kind of spell out when that applies, and I want to talk more with Kristen about that. And it also is, so by right, how do I impose it? How do I tell them they have to do it? If they come in for a building permit, that's when they come in. So.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about a by right land development application.
Well, they're going to do a land development.
Yeah, but
so it's required for land development.
So I guess maybe that's where I'm misinterpreting this.
Yeah. So when they come in for land development, if the tract is within 660 feet of center line of a pipeline, they.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got myself spun around here. You're right.
Yep.
So section A1 says if it's a preliminary plan for land development, and A3 is if it's a conditional use for these. So, so I'm sorry. I'm incorrect. You're
so
right.
We're getting all three. We're getting the land development, we're getting the conditional use, and we're getting that building permit addition to CTDI's building that's within 660 feet.
I'm good. I mistaken this. I jumped and started looking through this subsection 3 and thinking that it was only going to be applicable for the conditional uses, but this is coming in for land developments under subsection A1. So, okay, I'm good with that.
The challenge is that consultation ordinance with the board is, I can hear it now. I can hear the question. So you're going to require someone to do this kind of study when they come in to do a
deck,
a patio or something within 660 feet.
I don't want to jump out of order because Ernie likes to keep in order here. The consultation zone isn't asking you to do this hazard mitigation study. They're only asking you to do a consult with that. I have my opinions to share about the consultation zone here in a little bit. So just keep Ernie in track here. That's it for my comments related to the saldo ordinance here. I'm happy to jump into the other one if you want, but I wait.
I will.
Ernie tells me to.
I'm cracking the whip here.
Yep.
John, any comments?
No, I questioned about the measurement was taken care of, so I'm good.
Okay. I have a question. I picked up on the township park. I thought would be pulled. Excuse me, what is it? B2, when we do an assessment, I'm not sure it's necessary, but my only question came to me, what standard would they do the assessment for potential negative impacts? Is there a standard? Or we just like, who calls something a potential negative impact?
The professional in charge.
I'm sorry, who?
I would say you're relying on a professional engineer to come back and do this.
Okay, I'm all right with that. That's fine. That's fine. That's a good answer. The next part under C, I would like to pull the pipeline task force out only because that's not a standing, well, I don't know how long they're going to have a task force. It's not like a commission or, am I right there, Mark?
Yeah, I saw it. Where is that? Is that in the last section?
See, about 7 lines down, right on the end on the right-hand side. Emergency management, fire marshal, fire chief, utility providers, pipeline task force. I just don't want to get hung up if the task force dissolves in a year or two.
I think you could generalize that by saying any other township authorities, boards, or authorities.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we put authorities, boards, commissions, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the only comment I have. Okay, great. Let's go into the ordinance comments. I'll start at the bottom again, at the bottom, at my list anyway. Mike Pagnelli, any comments on that?
No,
Okay. Mark Levy,
No, I mean, I've got to review it in more detail, but
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll
If something pops up that's like a fatal flaw,
Yeah.
just send Mark
Yeah.
an email because he'll be
Sounds
looking
good.
at it. Okay, Mike Koza,
I'm sorry, Ernie, which one were we going
like,
about through now?
consultation.
Okay, so my understanding is like, we didn't draft this draft ordinance yet. We're just, that's what's up for the next meeting, right? Like, this is
Yes.
based on like what Mark found, like as an example.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand like the thought behind it, but I'm concerned and like think about it when we're putting this together. Like Mark started alluding it to, like, you know, if you're in Bowtree and you're like 2 streets over and you want to put a shed or a deck or something, you know, you're gonna ask these people to go and I mean, I don't know how strong it's gonna be if they have to. If you're just telling them, you know, here you go, like, just be aware that these are out there and so forth, and kind of show them how far away it is. But if they have to go and like call 5 different or however many, you know, a couple different entities and try to get a hold of them and do a bunch of stuff, I think that's going to be a little, you know, unfair and like causing more harm than good is what I would be, you know, expressing my concerns as far as that goes.
Okay. Mark, any comment on that?
Yeah, I'm just looking at what they've defined as development permit. And
Because like whenever you get a building permit, Mark, I mean, it's like when you put a shovel in the ground, you're gonna have to get a PA1 call, right? And then those
Yep.
people would come out and lay out the utilities. So it's like also in their interest to protect their utilities. So, you know, it's kind of police. I would assume it's policing itself, you know, at least from a
so
construction.
what they,
like,
yeah, so what they've done with this definition is they said construction that involves work totally within an existing building footprint, such as a residential remodeling project, is specifically exempted from these consultation zone requirements. And we can modify that you know, construction that involves work totally within an existing residential building lot, such as a residential remodeling project, deck, patio, swimming pool, you know, because
yeah,
they have, like you said, they have to do PA1 calls anyway. So the intention here is on the big ones, is on the, if Wellington wants to do something, then, you know, they'll have to get something. They're right on top of the pipeline.
Yeah.
But they could come in for building permits and not go through the planning commission, or it's not a conditional use or a land development. So this would kind of capture that. Again, I think this is so new that I think Kristen and I need to get our heads wrapped around how we want to do it. And, you know, that's what I was saying. If Ernie and maybe one other, maybe we could bounce it off of a couple of you once we have a draft. And I could send it to everybody once we have a first cut, and then you could just comment back individually.
Why don't you do that, Mark?
That's what I'm thinking. If you really want to try and wrap this up in February.
Yeah, send your first draft and we'll take.
Because I don't think the board's going to have a problem with the first one with our saldo. I think that one's pretty straightforward. This one, this could get in the weeds with them a little bit, because these are by right. This is a building permit. This is, you know, so it could be a little.
Okay. Well, let's do that. All right. Okay.
Rather than
Anything
wasting a
else,
whole lot of
Mike?
time here.
no,
Anything else, Mike?
I think Mark answered it. Thank you.
Okay. Ed?
My concerns are similar to what Mike and even what Mark was saying with the by right and some of the residential issues, but it sounds like Mark's going to be looking at that with Kristen. So that was really my concern.
Yeah, I'm not in the camp to make this difficult for every single building permit. I got enough work to do. We don't have enough people to do what we got going on. So it's just, she's right. I think it does cover down on those that we're not getting. So we need to figure out how we want to capture and not overshoot.
Okay. Is that all, Mike? I'm sorry, Ed?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
the other-
Dan.
yeah, that's it.
All right, Dan, I'm in line. You're up.
Okay. I'm going to share my opinion on this consultation zone. I don't know what you really get out of it. And I guess maybe I'll ask Mark his opinion on this. I mean, all my years of doing projects here, you know where people know where the pipelines. I have never reviewed a building permit application come in or a land development application and people didn't know they had a pipeline on their property. And without having a consultation zone, if the township, we know where the pipelines are, and it's even more accessible now with what the county's done with their pipeline documentation and stuff on their web, that you can end up getting better mapping of these areas and where these pipelines are. So I never run into a project where we're like, oh wow, we had no idea there was a pipeline there. And then my next thought is we've done development projects that involve pipelines. Ultimately here, we, from a private land development point of view and or municipal review point of view, we are, if someone's crossing a pipeline, we have a new high school being built down in southern Chester County, and we basically made them supply documentation to us that they are have the authority to cross over that pipeline and build their road crossing the pipeline. They built a brand new road, and they were crossing with storm sewer and sanitary sewer force main for this. So it's already being covered. I think your saldo for the larger projects gives the municipality authority to tell them to get a letter of approval saying that you're okay with the layout as is. So I'm not sure what we're getting out of this here. And for the most part, a lot of times you send the stuff to the pipeline companies. The only thing they're looking at is they're giving you back documentation. And I've talked to the Sunocos, the Texas Easterns, the Buckeyes, and they come back with their standard saying, if you're crossing a pipe with a utility, you need to have 18 inches as a clearance. We need to make sure that your grades over top are not decreased, that you're not cutting so that we have less than 4 feet of fill over top of the pipe. So those are the type of stuffs that we get back from the pipeline companies. I've never been told by a pipeline company that we can't cross their line or can't build within adjacent to their easement. So the consultation is just their standard language. They literally spit out their documentation for us that shows us that these are the standards you need for crossings. And we've been living all these years without a consultation zone requirement. I think you have the authority if someone's building a deck and they have a pipeline that runs their backyard to say, hey, to let us know the pipelines company's allowing you to put your footers in their easement. So I don't know. That was just my initial thought with this consultation zone. I'm not sure what it's getting us from what we have now.
Okay.
I tend to agree too.
Okay.
Yeah, and there isn't any meat within this consultation zone. All it's doing is coming back and telling you need to reach out to these pipeline companies and send the stuff to them certified mail. But I mean, from a land development application, I'm not, as a municipal engineer here, I'm not approving a plan if they basically just send me a proof of publication or a proof of notice that they send it to the pipeline. I'm going to say I want them to tell us that it's okay for you to build this road or driveway over top of their pipeline. So I don't know. I think it should be. I know it came in late here with the package, but those are my thoughts on it. I don't know what it really gets us here for this, and I think it can. Your current ordinances and your. I've never had an issue where we where we tell somebody you have a pipeline, you can't build there. Oh, wow. I mean, it doesn't come up.
Okay. Anything else, Dan?
Nope, that was kind of the concept here of my thought
Good.
with it. I don't know if it's needed, so.
Okay, good. Thank you. John?
Mark, is this to capture just pipelines that are on someone's property or like within 660 feet of the center line?
Well, and that's what you can identify that a consultation zone is hereby established for any parcels within X
Okay,
feet. So
okay.
we can set that.
Yeah, because I'm kind of in agreement with some of the other guys that we're going to create a large burden on the resident if they're just trying to do some small thing or even a small addition to their house. It could be a substantial burden. I don't know if we can limit it to just commercial properties or apartment complexes, things like that, where it's higher intensity uses as opposed to just the single family residential zone. That's my only comment.
Okay, I personally didn't see need for the consultation zone because I thought we had captured everything in the ordinance. But I'm gonna, I'll leave this to the input you got. What I'd suggest, Mark, is you've got input on it. You know how we feel. You can, and
Yeah.
Kristen can work through it and see what you want to do with it.
I think what I'm doing now is send it back to Rick. Say, Rick, he always has a much a very good common sense approach to these kinds of things. So I want him to take a look outside of my purview in the code department, and he's going to have a much better understanding of how the board's going to feel about this, and then talk with Kristen. The three of us will talk to Kristen, and I have a feeling that, I have a feeling to the conclusion that what we have in our drafted ordinance is hitting the mark, with obviously with some minor updates we need to track. But let me do that, and I'll get back to you with what staff recommends.
Okay, so we should have something with some meat by next meeting.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other comments before I move on? Okay, excellent. The last thing I want to bring up, and it's not on the, it's kind of on it, but it's not on the agenda, is can you bring up the goals, Mark, or do you want me to bring it up?
I do. I have it.
I have it up if you don't. So I sent this out to you guys tonight. If you had, I sent it a month or so ago too. So I just want to finalize our goal, our accomplishments for 2020 and our goals going forward for 2021, which will be on the 26th. And I may or may not be able to attend that meeting. I know Mark will. And I think last time, who was it that attended? Was it Ed that attended last time, or Mark, or Mike?
Mike
Mike did it last time.
Mike
John was there
Koza.
too.
Who?
John was there too.
Okay. So I'm just going to ask if I have one or two, you guys can commit to being at that call, because I may or may not. I'm going to be out of town for 2 weeks, and I'm coming back probably that day, so I'm not sure what's going to happen by that night. So do we have two of you or three that can go to that meeting and talk to it?
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
I'm sorry, who is that?
John?
John, and who else? Okay, John and Mark, I know that. Okay, great, thank you. I think you've seen this. This is what our accomplishments in 2020. I think we've got a pretty good list of stuff there. And then if you have any questions, the goals for 2021, we'll spend some time. I think that's pretty aggressive as it is. We still have the Open space, we got to, obviously there's stuff on maintaining that. That's part of the comprehensive plan. The Paley Pike Trail, I think we'll see some stuff on that. The Paley Pike Corridor, that's on hold to the budget restraints, and so is the enhancement of the business opportunities. We're still, I mean, I think part of this also ties into, we still have the T&D ordinance that's on the Board of Supervisors desk to go after. And that would also straighten out some of the Paley Pike Corridor things. I don't see the T&D on that, do I? Well, it's because we already did it. We're waiting for them to do something with it. And then we want to support the Board of Supervisors request to exist the zoning ordinance for possible revision updates. We're moving forward on the business park task force, which we'll expect address the business park and the I districts. And then we'll focus on the remaining districts. Does anybody see anything in there that doesn't make sense or would like to add something?
My only question before was the items that we have there on hold due to budget restraints. Should we even have them on there?
I'd like to keep them on there only because we can pick it up next year so we don't lose it.
Okay.
And only that, and also if this COVID leaves or something and the budget gets loosened up, we can go after it. If I'm not mistaken, Mark, that's the budget restraint on that. What was that budget restraint? I don't remember right now.
So right now we don't have any budget for a planning consultant or any additional planning efforts at this point. Just
okay.
It just deferred, and
okay, that's fine. Does anybody else have any objections to any of the pieces, parts, or like that something?
No, I mean, if my only comment on those items on hold, if for some reason or other we are very quiet and we don't have activities to do, I don't see there's any reason why we can't, as a planning commission, without a consultant, to go through and start talking about them and just brainstorming and getting our ideas together and kind of assembling our notes for it. So
it's not a bad idea, especially for Westchester Pike. We're already taking a shot at Paley Pike, so couldn't hurt.
All right, well,
change the scenery and
just take the on hold off then. Okay, just take the on hold off. Any other comments? Okay.
Where do we have
Mark,
the pipeline hazard mitigation ordinance? Should we spell that out specifically as a goal to complete in 2021?
you could do that, yeah, because technically we hadn't completed pipelines, so you could.
Yeah, I have it up
Because we'll have that this year.
It's up in the completions, up in that right there. It says we're closing in on final recommendations. It should complete effort early 2021. Yeah, we could add that to 2021. I missed that.
Okay.
Right there, Mark.
Yeah.
You can add that, Mark.
If I can edit your document here, there we go. So we'll move that one.
Yeah. Okay. Good pickup. Thanks, John. Anything else? Okay, Mark, you can have this over to Susan so she knows what to put together for the meeting.
Yes, sir. I'll get this to her.
And could you also send us, well, we'll get the copy from Susan when she sends it out, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll send it to you once I complete it.
Okay. Thank you on that. Any new business? Any other matters? We do not have a liaison. Okay. We talked about the township goal setting meeting. And how'd the business park task force meeting go? I saw that went, you guys, 2 of you went or 3 of you went, how'd that go?
Going pretty good. It was me, Ed, and John, and pretty much they were sending around like some people from the Futures Committee sent today, kind of like a questionnaire, like Kent questionnaire to tweak, and then I believe the plan is to split up the businesses in the business park and kind of reach out and start doing some question and answer type situations, and then bring that feedback back to discuss as a group. So that's kind of what we talked about. Is that how you guys saw it?
Yes, and also probably encouraging in the future more light industrial potentially in the business park was one thing that came up.
Oh, late, okay, good. Well, that's the Futuristic Committee and they're looking for the future. Okay, that's all I have to cover. Do I have boy, we're hitting a record here tonight, aren't we? Do I have a record for, a recommendation for closure?
Can I, before we do that, Mark, can I ask anything on the agenda coming up?
Right now, no, sir. I don't have any applications or plans. No.
I'll make a
Okay.
motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. I appreciate your effort and time. Thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, folks.
Ruth, do you have any questions or anything tonight?
Not right now.
Okay.
I'll get in touch with you if I do.
Was that a hard one, Ruth?
No, and also Susan always sends me the link to the recording so I can check in there.
Ah, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
thanks,
Good.
Mike.
Great.
I think
You're
we're
welcome.
moving pretty
Thanks,
good on
guys.
that pipeline. I think we're getting pretty far on that pipeline. I'll get that thing done. I know I'm pushing.